G'day and welcome back to the CooCast. My name is Nick. Today we are talking all things Game of Thrones, the latest episode, Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 2, The Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I think that's what the episode's called. Let me just double check that because that's always something I had to check before I came on board. But, it was a pretty good episode. I really actually... I kind of like that this episode was not a battle episode, I guess, which I'm glad that they're saving these big sort of action episodes for kind of, I guess, next week, I guess we'll find out. But I like these, I kind of like that this is a bit more of a return to form in terms of the writing is focused a lot more on the interactions between the characters. And as an audience member, I feel... it's nice to see a few of these character payoffs or just seeing our favorite characters interact with each other in ways that we haven't seen since the very early episodes. I mean, we're talking like Gendry and Arya, which we'll talk about in depth. I mean, it's nice seeing Brienne and Jaime back together again. Tormund as well. I mean, Tormund was obviously in the last season as well, but it's just, there's just a lot of these nice interactions that are peppered in through this episode, which I really, really appreciated. There's a lot of warmth in this episode. There is a lot of comedy in this episode. It's a bit of a laugh episode, but not in a bad way. I feel like those laughs in this episode were pretty good. Overall, it was a pretty good episode. I quite enjoyed a lot of it. There are only a handful of little nitpicky things that my sister was discussing with me that we thought were a bit strange. When she pointed it out to me, I thought it was quite funny. That it didn't even occur to me, but I guess they kind of hid that pretty well. Anyway, so I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear what you guys thought of this episode. I'm liking this season so far. It doesn't look like it's going to be... I kind of like the non-rushed pace of it. I know there are some parts of it they are rushing through. There's some questions up in the air of whether certain things are going to unveil themselves later on in the show, but we will see. We will see where this show is going. So far, liking it. I haven't got any problems so far, although I'm sure there will be many problems later on. So we start out with the episode. Obviously, recapping from last episode, we had essentially Jaime turn up at the end of the last episode, and Bran, I really have no idea how to say it. Bran is basically giving the Bran stare, which, I mean, there are so many fantastic names of the Bran stare at the moment where... you're just looking, everybody is just looking around and you see Bran just staring at you for no particular reason. Fun fact, my sister basically told me that the actor who plays Bran is actually needs glasses to see with. And so usually he doesn't like wearing contacts. So apparently when he's on set, he's just sitting in the wheelchair and he doesn't have to really move around. He just takes off his glasses and he actually can't see all that well. Everybody's quite blurry, which I can appreciate because obviously I wear glasses. And so when he's kind of staring kind of into space and just not really focusing on anything, he just kind of looks like he's looking at you. He can't really see you. In fact, Sophie Turner was commented about how like when she gets looked at by Bran, it sort of pierces her soul, but in reality he just can't see. He can't. It's just a big blur to him. So I thought it was quite an amusing fact. Anyway, so we all think it's going down. Although people who have kind of watched the show, I don't know if anybody would have really thought anything would have gone down between Bran and Jaime. But obviously Jaime has to have the showdown. But we'll get to that in a sec. So Jaime's in front of the council. He turns up at Winterfell. He's basically pledging his allegiance to the Starks and wants to fight on behalf of Daenerys and everybody else because he doesn't think that Cersei's going to do what she says she's going to do, and so he just wants to fight because he believes that's the honorable thing to do. Nobody really believes him. They think he might be a plant from Cersei. They don't know why, but they think could be a plant. I mean, to be fair, he is on the other side. Tyrion vouches for him, but we all know Tyrion is his brother, so that's kind of a bit biased. And then we have Brienne, basically, who just comes out of nowhere in this episode. I actually I yelled at the TV. I was like, where did she come from? I guess she must have been there the whole time, but we just didn't see her in the previous episode. So she's in this episode. She turns up. She basically says, look, this guy saved my life. He saved me more than once, and I really vouch for this dude. And Lady Sansa, Sophie Turner, basically says, look, all right, I trust Brienne. I don't trust Jaime, but I trust Brienne. So we'll let him go. And so Dany kind of has to kind of like, all right, well, what do you say, Jon Snow? And Jon says, look, we need everybody we can get. And then right after that, so Jaime gets off the hook, obviously, because, you know, they're all good for that. And Bran drops this really funny line, which is kind of throwing a bit of shade in this direction. It was kind of a snarky, kind of funny line, but I don't know if it was meant to be that way, where he says, the things we do for love. Obviously referring to the fact that he was thrown out the window in the very first episode, essentially, because, you know, he caught Jaime and Cersei basically getting it on together. Ugh. But yeah, so we get that, and it was a pretty funny line, but obviously nothing really comes. He doesn't allude to anything more of that. I thought he was going to drop some truth bombs, he was going to drop some Dr. Phil bombs on him, but basically nothing occurred out of that. So we move on, and Dany's kind of looking over at Jon Snow and asking him, like, you know, I think she's still in lovey-dovey mode, but Jon's a little bit kind of maybe a little bit horrified by the fact that he's actually related to his aunt. I don't think he knows that it's his aunt, but they know they're related, so that maybe is a bit weird. I don't know, maybe in this place, being related and liking your cousin isn't the worst thing in the world. Cousin, aunt, whatever it is. Anyway, so... and then we go to another scene. There's that scene where basically Arya comes down to see Gendry. And look, we all know they get together in this episode, but I think I was asking my sister this too, whether I was just misreading this, or was there a little bit of sexual chemistry between Gendry and Arya? And obviously towards the end of this episode, I was completely right. But I suppose that was always the point. My sister, Michelle, the sister I'm talking about is Michelle. I'm talking about this in depth with Jesse. I want to see if I can get her on the podcast, but that may be a bit difficult. She's kind of busy and I'm kind of busy, so we'll see how we go. But essentially, Gendry and Arya have had a bit of chemistry since the very first episode. So I need to go back and watch these episodes because it's been a while since I have seen the interactions between all these characters. I just don't remember this stuff happening. But yeah, a whole bunch of these guys apparently got together, and Gendry and Arya had a bit of a thing. So it's nice to see that they finally were able to hang out together. Probably the most uncomfortable watching. I honestly didn't enjoy seeing the fact that Arya was disrobing. I just felt like, isn't she a bit young? But I guess she's not young anymore. She's a teen. Like she's at least, I think she's at least 18 or 19. I don't know. It was kind of like that point, like that girl from Modern Family, like the eldest daughter in Modern Family. She still kind of looks pretty young, but in reality, she's actually probably close to 30. So I don't know if Maisie. I don't know how old is Maisie Williams. Let's look that up. But regardless, it just seemed like a very weird scene. So it was a bit uncomfortable to watch. I'm sure it's fine, but it's just uncomfortable. Anyway, so Arya and Gendry obviously get together later on. They're making googly eyes. I love that scene where Arya is basically throwing those knives at the wall, basically showing Gendry that, look, I'm not a little girl anymore. I can kill people. So maybe you need to get with the program and realize and just make my damn weapon. And so Gendry's like, all right, I'll make your weapon. Gah. Anyway, so Tyrion, we also have Tyrion and Jaime basically having this talk in the courtyard, just sort of catching up and, you know, sort of just talking about where they are. I actually can't remember what they were talking about in the scene, but I thought it was kind of cool how they're just sort of walking around and then they walk to the top of the tower. And then Jaime kind of looks over and sees Brienne in the middle of you know, of the, what do you call it, the field, and basically goes down to talk to her and says, and Jaime's basically saying, look, I want to fight with you. Which I thought was kind of touching. I mean, Jaime obviously has had a very large arc. I wouldn't say that he was a terrible person to begin with, but he definitely had some things that he had to deal with, particularly with his sister. I think his sister was basically corrupting him to do terrible things. I mean, all right, that's probably not fair. He was already doing terrible things, but he's starting to realize that a lot of the things that he did was terrible. Going back to that thing, I thought it was quite interesting that putting Jaime in front of Dany, particularly because Jaime specifically is the one who killed her dad. So that was kind of an interesting tension to put there. I'm actually really surprised Dany didn't just go straight ahead and just kill this dude, but I guess they have their reasons. And I don't know if it was necessarily outlined in the best way, but it's cool. I'm glad Jamie survived. So yeah, Jamie basically pledges his allegiance to fight with Brienne. And Brienne's kind of been weirded out by this, but I like that closeness. I like that bond that they forged, and I like that they're still kind of trying to find. He obviously Jamie has a lot of affection for Brienne, not in a romantic way, but definitely respects her and really appreciates who she is because they've been through a lot together. And speaking of going through a lot together, the scene that kind of actually got me the most, I mean, apart from later on when we see Brienne get, the scene with Brienne later on, but that surprised me was the Theon and Sansa scene. So when Theon turns up and he basically pledges his allegiance to House Stark to fight alongside them, and then Theon looks over to Sansa and Sansa basically kind of breaks down and they have this massive moment. Oh my gosh, it was just... Oh, right in the heart, man. I was just like, man, I completely, they were right. Like, those guys went through so much together, especially through that whole Ramsay Bolton phase was just horrific. And the fact that they managed to escape that situation alive is just a miracle in itself. And so I really appreciated that moment. I love that it was such a great callback to everything that's happened to them. And I love that they're kind of together and they can just share that moment together of just how they were able to help each other escape. Well, Theon essentially helped her escape. So that was, it was amazing. I love seeing those two together again. We've obviously gone back and seeing Tormund and the Night Watch basically returning from going to the Umbers basically. And from the previous episode, we see, I didn't talk about that in the last episode, but yeah, that kid getting burned alive. As I found out, that kid getting burned alive was basically a stunt guy, which there was an actual stunt guy. Actually, I talked about it in the previous episode too. There was an actual stunt guy who got burned alive for like 5 seconds or something. Pretty crazy stunt. In any case, though, so they come back from the Umbers, and we get Jon coming in, and he gives him this great reunion. This great reunion scene where Jon's walking and run over to one of the Night Watchmen, and then all of a sudden we see Tormund just tackle him, and Tormund gets the best scenes in this whole episode. I mean, it was one of the funniest things. I laughed really hard when Tormund just runs over and just tackles him, and then they're all just sort of... But it was such a great scene. I feel like I like the fact that they're building a lot of this levity into the scene, because I feel like when the tragedy does come, it's going to mean a lot more, because we're seeing all these characters just before the storm. And we're getting to know each of these people individually, which I know is going to be a heartbreaker when a lot of these guys are going to start getting cut down, particularly next episode. Man, longest episode. So I think it's like 90 minutes this next episode. Basically, we're going to be watching a movie this next episode. So I'd be interested to see how they play this one out, and if they are actually able to resolve the whole battle in one episode. Unlikely. I feel like there's going to be a lot of stuff in the next episode that... Will they figure out how to kill the Night King in one episode? And this is where I'm not sure. Or will they just have to retreat? Don't know. We're going to have to find out, I guess. It's nice to see that Sam is... and Tormund has that line where he says, "Is the tall girl around? Is the tall one around?" Or something along those sort of lines. Classic Tormund. I love how he's just obsessed with Brienne. So Sam's wife is also there. Tully? I forget Sam's wife's name. And Sam Jr. is also there. So we just know that she's alive. She's basically at Winterfell, preparing the people to get into the crypt. I like that little scene with the Onion Knight, and he's talking to the little girl who wants to fight, who has a mark on the side of her face, very similar to the poor girl who got burned alive at the stake, the daughter with the dragon skull on it. But I don't know if that was necessarily any kind of reference or that was supposed to be deliberate, but definitely felt like that was supposed to be a callback to that scene. So yeah, the Onion Knight basically telling the girl that she should basically go into the crypt and fight for her brother and sister. So it was nice little touches like this. There's a lot of humanity in this episode, which I really appreciated. So I think also we have Dany basically giving Tyrion the hard line, basically saying you are a crap hand to the king or to the queen or whatever it is. And I have to agree with her. He hasn't really made a lot of great decisions on behalf of Dany ever since he became the hand to the queen. I don't think he's a particularly good strategist, but he's still there. Maybe if George R. R. Martin had his hand over the situation, he might have been a better tactician, but I feel like he hasn't made a lot of great choices. So I think he should have been given the flick, but for whatever reason, they've decided, well, nah, maybe we won't give him the flick because reasons. Oh, excuse me. That was a big burp. Just move this grill out of the way because I think it realizes right over my face. Anyways, but Jorah Mormont, Jorah, friend zone Jorah, basically is, vouching for Tyrion, which I thought was quite interesting. I dig this dude. I think he's a great guy. I think Jorah is one of the most stand-up characters. I really like him, and I think his arc has been really good. Although he's completely blindsided for his love for Dany, but he is a great dude. It's kind of funny that whole getting the dragon scale off and just cut it off, and then you're fine. Oh, that scene where he gets the dragon scales cut off him, man, that was a rough scene. That would have been some crazy prosthetic work to do. But they acted the hell out of that scene. It was just look terrible and nightmarish, but I'm glad that he's out of it. And he doesn't look like he has any scarring, so that's kind of a plus. So yeah, we've also got Sam essentially giving his sword, which I thought was quite funny that he gives his sword basically to Jorah to basically fight on behalf of him because he said he can't really leave the sword, but it's Valyrian steel. I thought it was a nice scene. Basically also shows Sam's character being the stand-up dude that he is, that he holds no ill will to the fact that Jorah definitely would have been, that Jorah basically is there, and he was, he's so loyal to Dany. I thought it was just like a peace offering saying, look, I don't like what you did, but I'm not going to hold it against you. We're just fighting this war together. And I kind of like, it's just a stand, because Sam is just a stand-up dude, and he is. It's funny, right? Like, he's like Sam from Lord of the Rings. Maybe George stole that from there too. I don't know. Maybe Sam is a very likable name for characters. If you ever write fantasy novels, you need to name the character with the greatest amount of the purest of heart, Sam. So just keep that in mind. That's one of the formulas you need to follow. And so we have this scene too where Bran and Jaime do have it out. That was quite early in the show. Bran basically sitting at that tree with the red leaves. I forget what the family tree thing. And Jaime comes to meet him. And Jaime's really hesitant. He thinks like Bran's going to like blast him, but then realizes that Bran basically informs him that he's not really the same Bran that he met when he threw him out the window. He said that Bran died when he became the Three-Eyed Raven, essentially. So he's neither Bran or the Three-Eyed Raven. He kind of something in between. And he said, and I thought he also said something quite profound, is essentially that neither him or Bran would have been where they are now if he hadn't been pushed out the window. Character-wise, I think. And that was kind of profound, because it's like some of those things had to happen for them to be where they are now, which is true. If Bran didn't get pushed out the window, he would never have been crippled and therefore never been able to embrace the fact that he could have been the Three-Eyed Raven. And likewise with Jaime, I don't think he would have gone down the path that he would have gone down had he had not pushed Bran out the window and wouldn't have had that character development to become the better person that he is now. I'm not saying that I agree with the fact that you should push people out, do terrible things to become better people, but it makes, in the greater scheme of things, it made sense, and I thought that was quite an interesting way to look at it. But yeah, and then Jaime says, I think later on Jaime asked Bran, like, what do we do? What happens tomorrow? What happens when this is all over? What do we do next? And then Bran says something along the lines, what makes you think there's going to be something next? Which my sister believes means that Jaime is probably going to die in the next episode. I actually took that comment to mean that he's probably, I think Bran is just sort of just toying with him, saying like, what makes you think we're going to get through this? I'm assuming Bran can see into the future. I'm not really sure, or can he see in the future? Can he only see into the past? Like, we've already seen that Bran has the ability to basically affect things in the past. But can he affect things in the future, and can he see into the future, or does he have to wait for things to happen? This is where it gets a little bit confusing. So I'm not sure how this is all going to play out, but we're going to see. I have a feeling too that Bran is going to play a significant role, not just in playing the bait, but he's going to play a significant role in actually winning over, killing the actual Night King himself. One thing that was pointed out to me is that Bran not only can see the future, but he has the ability to walk into things. So if you remember in the previous episodes, he's able to actually mind control Hodor, right? Now Hodor was really dumb, but he was actually able to do it. So he wasn't only able to just walk into animals, he was able to walk into humans. So the Night King also has this ability. Now, it could be a battle of the minds. We could get a Magneto thing going on where it's two psychics kind of like battling it out. That would be kind of cool if Bran is able to basically control some White Walkers. We shall see. I don't know if he can control groups of White Walkers, and maybe he's been enhanced by the fact that he got the Three-Eyed Raven abilities as well. There's also some really weird theory that Bran is the Night King. But I don't know how that plays out. I got to look that theory up, but that's another theory for another day. Okay, and so we also have Arya and Hound have a quick conversation. It was a good conversation. I like any interaction with the Hound and Arya. I hope they get a little bit more scenes together. I hope they get to fight together. I would love to see a scene where the Hound actually sees Arya fight, and it's like a proud dad seeing his kid basically grow up and become like this kick-ass fighter. And then Tormund also tells. There's this really great moment where basically a lot of the main players. We have Jaime, Tyrion, Podrick, Brienne, Tormund, the Onion Knight, and basically all sitting around and just having a good old chinwag before basically the Night King turns up. And so it was quite funny. I liked that interaction too. My favorite was when Podrick asks if he can have a drink, and Tyrion's obviously drinking himself into a stupor, but Brienne basically says half a cup, and Tyrion pulls him like a very full cup of wine, which made me laugh with glee. I just love, because I love that interaction. It was obviously Podrick and Tyrion they were obviously mates, and it was nice to see them back together again. And we've obviously got that scene. There was that, episode, Last Jedi type scene where we have Tormund talking about how he killed a giant and then suckled at the teat of the wife, and that he drank the milk of a giant woman, and basically that's how he became so big. And then starts to guzzle whatever's out of his horn, and then it just all drips down his beard in the most Mark Hamill Last Jedi way possible. It was so funny and so gross and completely left field. I loved it though. I just thought it was hilarious at the same time. Honestly, Tormund got all the best scenes in this episode, so super pumped about it all. But I love his affection for Brienne, and then that scene too where Brienne basically says she says she's not a knight, she's a lady, and then Tormund's basically say, well, you should be a knight. Like, why can't you be a knight? You're pretty much as good as any other knight. And then Jaime does this great moment, where he basically knights Brienne, and it's very emotional, and she becomes a knight, and it's such a nice. Yeah, it feels like she earned it. You know what I mean? Like, she really deserves it. She's done so much, and just because she's a woman, so what? She gets knighted. And now Jaime's a dude. Jaime's a good dude. And everybody in the room appreciate, but they all clap. It's great. Tormund obviously clapping the loudest. And so we have the final scene in the crypt where Jon drops the news to Dany, basically saying, look, why? And then Dany's like, why you give me the cold shoulder, bruh? And Dany basically comes up, and Jon basically has to drop the truth on her and says, look, I'm sorry, but we're related. And so, she's obviously threatened by the fact that he has the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. However, how this will play out, I'm interested to see. I'm still, obviously, now that everybody knows, everybody's on the same page, and still, I don't know if she's completely convinced that he is, but will you not be convinced that maybe Jon could be the heir, or something was up with Jon because he basically rode a bloody dragon in the previous episode? Are we not as far as I understand, dragons aren't that nice to people who aren't Targaryens. I'm not saying they can't be, but kind of unlikely, especially it was Jon's first time on a dragon, and the dragon was like, yeah, bro, I'll let you ride me, no probs. So we had that scene, and then I thought that was kind of funny that we're just not addressing that whatsoever. So, but cool, whatever. And obviously we get the horn, we get the Doomsday Siren, which basically tells us that the White Walkers are coming, and we see the White Walkers appear on the horizon, and thus we end the scene. Oh, before that though, we do have a song from Podrick. And there's a beautiful montage just before we get to that crypt scene where Podrick starts singing this song. And we go through all the different people waiting for, essentially, for the war to begin. And it's a really beautiful scene. I believe there's actually some significance with that song, so I have to look into that. I'll see if I can find out some more details about that for the next episode. But the significance with that song, there are some people speculating that the lyrics of the song actually give away the ending for the movie. Oh, sorry, for the show. But we'll look into that for the next episode. Anyway, guys, some weird things that did happen in this episode, which I thought were kind of unaddressed. And we do having that sort of time slipping thing that we are getting in these later Game of Thrones episodes is how the heck did Theon get all the way from King's Landing to up north in one episode? It's a question we would all like to ask. How did these people get around so quick? He must have used the same technique that Gendry used to get from north of the wall back to the wall in basically half an episode. We've also got Tormund and the Brotherhood. Now just picture this. Tormund and the Brotherhood are basically north, at the Umbers, which is sort of north, pretty much going up towards the north. They get there and the White Walkers have already walked past, killed all the Umbers, and now they have to come back and they have to walk around the army to avoid them to get back to Winterfell. I don't know how they did. They must have been running the whole time where they weren't tired. I don't know. I just have some questions about the travel in this. Maybe there are eagles. I don't know, guys. Anyway, so what did you guys think of this episode? I have predictions that Bran actually will play a more significant role than just being bait in the next episode. But I guess we'll see how that plays out. I feel like the resolution with the White Walkers will resolve before the end of the season. I feel like this battle will not. Well, it might continue. Like there might be some residual stuff, but I don't think the White Walkers will be the main threat. I actually think Cersei will be the main threat, much like how in Luke Cage season 2, Mariah was the main threat, not so much the Bushmaster. So I feel like in this, it will be Cersei who will be the most difficult villain to take down because she is the most conniving in some regards. She may not have any undead, but she definitely wants the throne more than anybody else. I feel like they're leading into the fact that Dany is going to become a villain as well, because and I feel like she may descend into madness much like her father did, like the Mad King situation. So we'll see how that plays out. Would be sad to see Dany become a villain, but I feel like that's the way they're kind of moving it, if they're kind of slowly moving her towards being a villain as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they resolve the tension between Dany and Jon, now that she knows exactly everything Jon knows. I will be interested to see how Arya basically plays out. Yeah, basically how all the Stark kids play their role in the next couple episodes. What role Sansa plays, what role Arya plays. And yeah, obviously I'm hoping for more Arya Hound action as well. So, what are you guys expecting? I'm throwing it back to you guys. What are you guys expecting for the next few episodes? What are you excited to see? What would you like to see? And do any of these fan theories what are your theories about how this show is going to end? Hit me in the comments, and I would love to hear from you guys. If you just want to hit me up at nickbenku on Twitter or on Instagram, that's awesome. Otherwise, you can leave a comment in the YouTube video below. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time.